Welcome to the next episode of the Dragonfly tour, which covers my week-long trip to the Scottish Highlands. After a long 9-hour drive, I arrived near Beinn, just before sunset. There was my first hooded crow in a few years, but no sign of the bird I wanted to see. The next morning I woke up, after a brief walk in the opposite direction. There, less than 30 metres from my hotel, on the seawall was the bird I was after, a black guillemot. They were unfazed by people walking and jogging past, but flew off into the water as soon as the first dog walker passed by. I could have stayed longer with these fab birds, but the forecast was sun by midday in the Cairngorms, and I'd driven all this way to see the Scottish Dragonfly specialties. Unfortunately, I'd done my back in while photographing the black guillemots, which would hamper my efforts in the coming days. I met up with the ant boy himself, Sander, and his dad Ross, and after showing me some Scottish wood ants, they took me to a pond in Avonmore. On this pond we found some emerald damselflies and common blues, but none of the Scottish specialties. Sander and Ross were off on holiday, so I said my goodbyes and went off to another area of the Cairngorms, parked up and walked along a dirt track through some ancient pine forest. Walking up the track I saw some birds and thought, that could be crested tits. And when I got a good look at them, they were crested tits, a species only found in these Cairngorm forests in the UK. It started foraging low down in some dead branches on a pine tree, so I got some footage. I also came across this small orchid, which I later identified as creeping lady's tresses. A new species for me, so I stopped for some photos. I reached a large loch and I spotted a small blue damselfly among the common blues. It was a northern damselfly, my first target species. I could tell it was because it had the Carnivorous spur, which rules out common blue, and it was unlikely to be any other species of Carnivorous here. The last two large abdomen segments were almost completely black, which is another way to distinguish them from other species. It was a bit breezy, and they were a bit flighty, but I got some footage. Sadly, I couldn't find any females. I did get a mating pair of common blues though, and this male common blue damselfly was doing a good job eating the midges, although I'm pretty sure this is a non-biting midge. The second male was doing the same. A mallard crossed the Loch with her ducklings, and the sun did manage to break through for a few minutes, triggering some of the four-spotted chasers to fly around, though filming them with bad back in flight is not an easy task. The sun didn't last long, and all I could find afterwards was this honeybee getting a drink and a large red damselfly. So I headed to the fire ponds at Loch Garten, but it was too cloudy for white-faced darters to be flying around. Just a bunch of true flies trying to warm up on my camera. A good start to my Scottish adventure. I just needed 3 more species of dragonfly: the white-faced darter, Azure hawker, and northern emerald, and a week in which to do it. I'm here in the wonderful Scotland, at a place called Slatterdale. I'm after Azure hawker today and northern emerald. Now, I did pop up here yesterday, had a good walk around. I found loads of these common hawkers. Despite the name, common hawkers are not all that common across much of the UK, and absent from all but a few localised areas in southern England, as their habitat is acidic pools in bogs, hence their other, arguably better name, the moorland hawker. That said, they were certainly common here, the most common species I saw. This species can be told apart from other hawkers by which is that yellow vein at the front of each wing. While filming the common hawker, I got a bit of a surprise, as you can hear, as a large fly landed on me. What the f*** is that? You're not trying to bite me, are you? It was one of these larger tapanid, or giant horseflies. This footage is one that I filmed later on. Thankfully, they rarely bite humans. On that day, I also saw some common darters basking in the sun. This one had a lot more black on the body than those I see in England, and I'm pretty sure it's a so-called Highland darter, which was once suspected to be a separate species, but genetic analysis has shown it's just a darker colour morph of the common darter that is often found in the Highlands of Scotland. I also saw this female black darter, which is another new species for the year. While I was walking around, I also came across an emerald, and looking it up, it must be a northern emerald. It looks like one, and there aren't any other emerald dragonflies here, so I can tick that off, but I haven't got any footage, so I'm going to have to try and get that today too. I just thought I'd put a bit of footage of
the wonderful landscape here because it is rather lovely. Now the sun keeps going in and out. It's meant to brighten up later. This is actually the day that all the forecasts are saying 40 degrees centigrade and stuff, but because I'm in northwest Scotland, of course, it doesn't apply here. But the sun should come out this afternoon, so fingers crossed. I might get both my target species today.
Sadly, all that posed for me here after this was a large red damselfly.
So I've just been walking down this path here, and on one of the stones, I didn't see it till too late, a dragonfly was basking, took off, went straight in front of my face, flew off into the landscape of course. But the markings were a lot darker than a common hawker, and the side of the thorax only had two narrow lines down the side, so nothing else can be but an Azure hawker. So that's 2 new species in 2 days for me, so that's good. Unfortunately, I haven't filmed or photographed either of them, so let's go see if I can find some.
So I headed to the pass around Beinn Visitor Centre and found this common hawker basking on the trunk of a Scots pine. A very Scottish scene. There was also this meadow pipit fledgling jumping around on the path, which was lovely to see. And this fledgling robin was sat in the garden of the cottage I was staying in when I got back there. The next day, I started walking up Beinn, a large mountain in the middle of the reserve.
Hi everyone, I've just stopped for a pit stop on the way up to Tansley Bog. I'm still in the Highlands of Scotland and the view is, well, look at it. I've already seen this golden ring dragonfly, which actually posed for me to film and photograph it, which was nice.
I'd already seen golden ring dragonfly in the New Forest, but it was just a flyby there, and I had glimpsed a pair earlier on my trip, but this one was posing lovely. I could clearly see a feature that is unique to this species along with the club-tailed dragonflies, which is they have 2 separate eyes that do not touch at the top of their head, unlike all the other species. It also enabled me to get a good look at that fantastic wasp-like colouring, which sometimes results in them being mistakenly reported as giant wasps, and just look at those fabulous green eyes. A bit further up the path were this mating pair of common hawkers too, hanging from a tree.
But I've got a little bit further to go to get to the actual bog. A little bit steep for an Essex boy who's used to flat landscapes, but I'm going to crack on.
I was enjoying the views as I climbed the steep path, even with my heavy camera gear.
Right, I'm nearly at Tansley Bog, and I stopped to admire this wonderful view, in no way because I'm completely knackered and out of shape walking up this very steep path. And as I stood there, I looked up and a green dragonfly that big, clearly a northern emerald, went about there to my face. So I can tick that off 100% now. And as I started to record this clip, one just flew past again. So let's go and see if I can find some more emeralds and hopefully some white-faced darters at the bog. So here's the thing, I've just walked halfway up this mountain. I've walked up to the waypoint that is called Tansley Bog. And the landscape was all slopey still. I've turned round, I've looked down at this wonderful view and spotted a rather nice looking boggy area. And then I started to wonder. So, sorry, horsefly. I opened up my guidebook. And in it says, under Tansley Bog, down in the valley. Didn't see that subtitle before. Look back to the foot of the hill. If you have them, use binoculars to focus on the details. There are trees, but there's also an open area threaded with channels and pools of water that can show bright against darker low vegetation. It's the blooming area down there, and I'm halfway up the mountain. And it's hot, and I'm sweaty, and I'm a bit grumpy. But I've seen a northern emerald. Let's go back down and try and find the bog.
I sadly didn't find any more dragonflies to film, or the way to get into Tansley Bog. I did, however, find these wonderful sundews, a type of carnivorous plant that uses sticky droplets on its leaves to trap insects, as you can see here. I finished off the day in a nearby river with my net and caught this young trout while looking for stonefly nymphs. The next 3 days were grey and overcast, so I went looking for dragonfly larvae in the few water bodies I could find, which were sadly low in number due to the drought. I couldn't find any, but I did have some luck finding clinging mayfly nymphs, water beetles and water boatmen in a nearby loch and stream. The next day, I decided to complete the path up the mountain that I took when I tried to find Tansley Bog. I got some fabulous views and found my first ever butterwort, another type of carnivorous plant with sticky leaves. The following day, I headed to the coast, but all I saw of note was this hooded crow.
I am back in the Abernethy Forest in the Cairngorms in Scotland. It's going to be a wet and sunny day. It's one of those, well, British weather days. Yesterday was my last day at the cottage. I woke up at 6 AM and I saw my first ever, well, not my first ever, my best ever views of a pine marten. I've glimpsed one before, but I had really nice views. And against the forecast, the sun had come out, so I went down and finally found Tansley Bog. Now while there, it was cloudy most of the time, but the sun just kept coming out, and there's more and more dragonfly activity. I thought I'd found a white-faced darter, which is the last species I need to find up here, but it was this, a four-spotted chaser. But I did see another northern emerald. I found some golden ringed, and loads of common hawkers. You might recall I came here on the way through and didn't see very much, but this is the only place I've ever seen white-faced darter. And that is my challenge today. I've got to find white-faced darter, otherwise it's unlikely I'll see them this year, which won't be very good. But right now, I'm just waiting for the sun to come out. But let's talk about what I saw yesterday. Yesterday I was sat here, there was a couple of nice ladies already here, and they were watching a raft spider eating a large red damselfly. You can see it feeding away here. And while we were watching this raft spider, a common hawker female came to lay some eggs. Ovipositing, to give it its correct term. But also this male kept patrolling, and a few times he actually hovered. And I did manage to capture him in flight, which was really nice. I went in to check in the reserve itself in Loch Garten. There's another pond there, but it was so cloudy and getting so late that there was no real dragonfly activity. I did see the ospreys though, which is pretty cool. So I'm back here this morning. The sun is just starting to creep out as I talk, so I'm gonna stay here for a bit and see what turns up.
At the fire ponds, the sun was coming out, and I spotted a small raft spider. Then a small dragonfly, which I thought was a white-faced darter, but was in fact a northern emerald. It was an egg-laying female. I never thought I'd capture that. A large red damselfly was sat on the boardwalk. It was twitching a bit. Before it was warmed up enough and took off. I then saw a different horsefly species crawling around in the small pond. A common hawker then started hovering in front of me. It spent the next 10 minutes buzzing round before posing beautifully for me. It hovered a few times and I got some lovely in-flight footage. And then the Northern Emerald female came back, so I filmed her laying some eggs some more. I waited around until 1 PM and the sun went behind some thick cloud.
Well, I've hung around these ponds for the best part of 2 or 3 hours. I think I've had the best of the weather. It's starting to try and rain. I haven't seen a white-faced darter, so a bit disappointing. And a few large reds buzzing around, and this wonderful male common hawker as well. But I thought I had a white-faced darter at one point, but a bit disappointed because it was just a Northern Emerald. And I went, hold on, a Northern Emerald, and there was a female egg laying in the little pond behind me there. So I've got some lovely footage of that, as you've seen. So I can't complain too much. It just would have been nice to see a white-faced darter. I've got a couple of ideas. Maybe I can squeeze the sighting in before the end of the year, but we'll see. It's getting a bit close to the end of the season for them.
So I decided to try elsewhere. I headed to the small loch down the road from Loch Garten, and there were some northern damselflies here. Not surprising, as this is a well-known site for them, and the first place I ever saw them a few years back. Also here were some emerald damselflies. And out over the open water, there were 4 spotted chasers flying round. And a few common blue damselflies. That was it for the dragonflies, but Xander and Ross had given me the heads up of another Highland specialty, the narrow-headed ant, and I found a nest of them, a new species for me. They look like wood ants, but have a smaller nest and a distinctive wide notch at the back of their head, as you can see here, as they are dragging back a dead horsefly to their nest. Not a bad way to end my Scottish adventure.